Skill Development, Chairman of Skill Development Committee, to please welcome the participants. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Madam. My distinguished colleagues in the Executive Committee, members of the Andhra Chamber of Commerce, and today's resource persons, Mr. Krishna Kumar and R Subramanian. I welcome you all for this webinar on alternative methods of financing. It's by chance in one of the groups I saw the product offering of Invoicemart, and it was quite interesting. And I went through the whole their website, and thereafter immediately I contacted them. Just to give a very brief background to the whole financing scenario. Maybe the company does well, or maybe the company does not do well, but the main problem continues to be the cash crunch.
Yes.
Cash crunch may come because the orders are too high, or the credit period is extended, or the company is not doing well. Their problem will always be perennial of cash accruals. So normally these people run to, after exhausting all the bank borrowings, all their limits, they resort to high cost financing, like at any rates of interest.
Yes.
It is here in this scenario, and it was actually the act came sometime in 2016, I think, by Reserve Bank of India. From then on, the Invoicemart has been working on this product. It's very interesting. Two things. I mean, they are going to tell about this product in their presentation. But what interested me is this particular financing option is available to everyone. That's number one. And number two, this financing is outside the system of bank borrowing. What I mean is, if there is a 1 crore limit, the beneficiary can go out 1 crore limit after exhaustion, still he can get this. That's number one. And it's actually a win-win for everyone. Even the companies which have to pay, when they settle their money through, they satisfy the MSME Act of paying in 45 days time. So all parameters are satisfied when this option is exercised. Cash crunch may come whenever there is a big order, or the payment getting postponed. In all these situations, cash is required, and Invoicemart, this option seems to be a viable option. So that is why we are now introducing this option to our members. That's it. Thank you very much, Mr. Krishna Kumar, for being with us, and Mr. R Subramanian. Over to you, madam.
Before we start the program, I'll just introduce the speaker of the day, Mr. Krishna Kumar. Mr. Krishna Kumar has over 15 years of experience in the banking and fintech sector, with a span of control over states across South. He has championed various initiatives in the supply chain space for forging tie-up with strong corporates across South geography and different leadership roles. He has worked in organizations like ICICI Bank, Yes Bank, and short stint with state government department in Kerala. Currently, he is holding a position of General Manager and Regional Head South in Invoicemart, which is the largest trades platform in the country. He is handling Tamil Nadu, Kerala, AP, Telangana, and Karnataka. He has been a regular designated speaker with RBI under various MSME initiatives like the e-BAG program across states. Over to you, Mr. Krishna Kumar.
So first of all, good evening, and thank you to all the dignitaries of Andhra Chamber of Commerce. In fact, a very big thanks to Mr. Padmanabhan sir, because I think you made my job easier by explaining the entire product in a nutshell. So I would say thank you for understanding the concept, because this concept was actually driven by Mr. Raghuram Rajan from RBI. When the initial thoughts, actually came to Mr. Rajan, when he visited, many developing countries, and he saw that there is a similar model which is already working out in Mexico. So what Mr. Raghuram Rajan thought is, if there is a developed model which is running, where a lot of these government department payments are seamlessly done digitally, so that all the suppliers can be paid on time. So I would like to stress the point on time, because usually you have MSME bills, but bills don't get paid on time in spite of having the MSMED Act and a lot of, facilitations. But the thing is that Mr. Rajan thought, why not replicate in the country? Because a common man, or I would say an MSME vendor, a trader, a manufacturer, has to go through a lot of bottlenecks when it comes to the banking system. So I'm being very practical about this. When it comes to the banking system, you will have to have finance. MSMEs will have to give a collateral kind of arrangement where you'll have to arrange finance through a collateral or a personal guarantee. You will have to go through n number of documents. If there are 50 banks in the country, each and every bank has a different procedure. Each and every bank has a different documentation. So what Mr. Rajan thought is, let us create a uniform structure in the country where there is a single platform. All the corporates, when I call corporates, it's not just the private sector corporates, it even includes government departments, state PSUs, central PSUs, and all its suppliers, whether he is a service vendor or a raw material manufacturer, all of them gets registered on this platform. And you have all these 40-50 banks coming together on one platform and financing all these invoices. So that is when Mr. Rajan introduced this concept in 2016. It in fact became a revolution. And in 2018, government came up with a gazette notification stating that any company with a turnover of above 500 crores and all central PSUs must compulsorily register on this platform and make payment to the MSME vendor. So it became a revolution. I would say it became a big thing in the fintech industry, and the traditional banking models are actually changing with the revolution of TREDS coming in. So TREDS stands nothing but it stands for Trade Receivable Discounting System. It is a centralized bill discounting system, which is RBI regulated, where it allows all the buyers. When I call buyers, these are the corporates. For example, it may include the ITCs, or if I take Chennai, say Apothis, or any corporate or a state PSU like a Kamarajar Port or an NLC India. So these are the buyers or corporates. And then you have the sellers, which are the MSME vendors, which are the second most important stakeholders. And the third are the bankers or financiers who come onto the platform, electronically bid for invoices and make the MSME payments on time. And you won't believe, any MSME invoice put on the platform will be financed in 48 hours time, irrespective of wherever the MSME have their bank accounts, be it an X bank or a Y bank. You need not open any account with any of the banks. You can come onto the platform, give the bank of your choice and get the money credited there because there is an invoice on the platform. And in fact, according to the parliamentary report, they always say that, the Indian factoring business that we call the bill discounting business, it has covered only 0.2% of India's GDP, which means such huge is the opportunity of making payments on time to the MSME vendors. So now I'll just take you through the presentation, what exactly our product is all about. Madam, if you can just share the screen.
Yeah, Madhu.
Yeah, so you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so basically, this is what governs TREDS. It's nothing but an online marketplace. It's called as a trade receivable discounting system. Now, these receivables are the cash receivables of all the MSME vendors. These are backed by invoices which are discounted on the platform. So our company is called Invoicemart, which is again a joint venture company between Axis Bank, which holds 67% stake in the company. The remaining 33% is held by a company called M Junction, which is again a Tata Steel sale venture. So the entire guidelines are set forth by RBI. So the entire product called TREDS was revolutionized by RBI, and it is nothing that the bank has brought about. It is a complete game changer of Reserve Bank of India. And all the KYC that we adhere to on the platform have to be, basically adhered to by all the banks. For example, if an MSME vendor gets registered on the platform, or if a corporate gets registered on the platform, whatever documents that you give one time to the platform will hold good for all the 40, 50 banks on the platform. They cannot come to you and ask for a separate document. And basically, this entire platform was actually brought in when the Financial Inclusion Skill India program was brought about by the government of India years back. And the focus area is nothing but addressing the delayed payment and easing the working capital of MSMEs. As Padmanabhan sir was rightly pointing out, this has nothing got to do with your working capital management. You can still continue with your working capital banker. This is an alternate mode of finance where it still doesn't affect your borrowing system, which means you can still avail finance here and still go ahead with your working capital bankers without giving any NOC to any of the banks. So second, these are the corporates or PSUs who come onto the platform. And as far as the banks are concerned, since the money is ultimately going to the MSMEs, it is a priority sector lending for them. Now, when I call priority sector, so basically any, if you lend 100 rupees in the market, 40 rupees has to be compulsorily into this sector called MSME, which is what the banks take care of. That's the reason you'll find rates as low as 3.5 to 4% per annum, which prevails on the platform. And the max I've seen as on date is nothing more than 10.5% on the platform. Next. Yeah, so basically this is the ownership. Axis Bank holds 67% stake. The remaining 33% is held by Tata Steel and SAIL, and the company is called as Invoicemart. So if you look at our platform right now, we have more than 900 corporates, which includes central PSUs like the HPCL, BPCL, or an NLC India, Bharat Dynamics. We have all the private corporates like the Tafe, the Simpsons, or any, say, the Ramco Group. So all these corporates are there on the platform. We have close to 40 banks, and even NBFCs are active on the platform discounting invoices. We've covered close to 9,000 plus MSMEs. This is a little old data, it's 8,000, but we've covered close to 9,000 MSMEs across the country. And I would say there is a major focus in the Tamil Nadu belt, because majority of the corporates, they have their vendors located in Hosur or say Tirupur, be it garments or auto manufacturing, etc. And this is present across 28 states. If you look at the coverage, we are present across 500 cities in the country. Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 cities have benefited because the MSMEs are regular there. I have been a part of many initiatives of Reserve Bank of India, where we help in a lot of MSME cluster development, where we go ahead and talk about threats and get these MSMEs onboarded with us. And when these MSMEs onboard with us, we in fact inform them who are the corporates who are there on the platform and help them to form a market linkage. Basically, they will find out the kind of markets that are available on the platform through the single registration. So point number 4, as I rightly talked about, it's a digital journey. There is no paperwork involved. It's a complete digitized mode of registration, a complete digitized mode of payment. Almost 6.5 lakh invoices have been discounted on the platform. And we were the first platform in the country to cross 11,000 crores. And we are the largest threats platform in the country. We were the last entrants, but being the Axis Bank and SAIL joint venture, we have been able to capture a better market share in the country right now. Next. So this is exactly what the process is. I hope the screen is visible. Now, as I rightly told before, Reserve Bank of India has allowed up to 180 days for discounting of invoices on the platform. Now, what happens is, once the invoices are put on the platform, the interest rates can be borne either by the corporate or by the vendor. Both options are available on the platform. Now, let me take a scenario. The first scenario where, say, seller or the MSME vendor is, bearing the interest. So initially, the onboarding, what happens is, I go to the corporate, for example, say at Ramco. I go to Ramco and take all his KYC documents. There is an application form and say an agreement by which he comes and registers onto the platform. It's a one-time registration. Ramco refers to me around, say, 400 to 500 of his MSME vendors, which includes both service and raw materials. I have an entire team across the country following up with these MSME vendors. We collect their KYC documents. There is an application form and agreement and an MSME certificate, which is the Udyam registration. With that, we register these MSME vendors onto the platform. Again, it's a one-time registration. With this registration, what happens is this seller or the MSME vendor will be linked or mapped to the corporate, say Ramco. And what happens is, on the platform, the seller will upload the invoice. For example, if there is an invoice which is generated and a payment has to be done in say 45 days time, as soon as the invoice is generated, the seller uploads the invoice on the platform. He'll be given a login ID and password. And with this, he will come onto the platform and upload the invoice. Once he uploads the invoice on the platform, the buyer, Ramco, will also be given a login ID and password. He comes onto the platform. He can say that X vendor has uploaded such and such invoice for 30 lakhs onto the platform. The buyer accepts this. Once the buyer accepts this, it has a tenor of 45 days or 30 days, whatever is the discounting tenor. Once the buyer accepts it, it goes to the financier for bidding. The financier comes to the platform and they can see that there are say n number of invoices come for bidding. Each and every bank places their bid. For example, if a State Bank of India, who's on our platform, is placing a bid for 8.5% per annum, there would be an Axis Bank or a Standard Chartered Bank counter bidding at say a 7% or a 6% per annum. Why do they counter bid? Because ultimately the entire recourse of repayment is on to the corporate and not on the MSME vendor. So I would like to reiterate this point, because in a traditional bill discounting model, if a corporate fails to make the repayment on the due date, the MSME vendor can be held responsible. But as far as TREDS is concerned, Reserve Bank of India was very clear. There will be nil recourse to the MSME vendor whatsoever. It will not be a bank borrowing to the vendor. He will just put the invoice, get his money on time. So the banks come and bids. These bids comes to the seller for acceptance. The seller can see which is the least bid. Say if 5% is the least bid, he accepts it on the platform. If the invoice amount is for 10 lakhs and the interest amount is say 100 rupees, 100 rupees gets deducted and the remaining amount goes to the seller's account. That is how the discounting happens. So in this scenario, the seller bears the interest. So even though the seller has a working capital account, he raises the invoice on the platform and gets the money the next day itself, because there is a discounting happens. And if this discounting tenor is 45 days or 60 days, whatever, on the due date, the buyer's account, that is Ramco's account, will be debited for the principal amount and the respective financial will be credited. So that is how the repayment happens. So in no scenario will the MSME be held responsible for discounting on the platform. That is what makes the product completely unique, because it is without any recourse, any collateral, or without any other documentation, and you get the money paid on time. Now, the second option is called a reverse factoring, where the buyer, in a reverse factoring transaction, what happens is the seller doesn't come into the picture at all. Here, the buyer or the corporate is bearing the interest. So what happens is the corporate directly uploads the invoice on the platform. It goes to the financier for bidding. The financier places the bid and the least bid is accepted by the buyer, say Ramco in this case. He sees what is the least rate, he accepts it. As soon as he accepts it, the money immediately goes to the MSME vendor's account within 48 hours, which means today, if before 4:30 p.m. the bid is accepted, the MSME vendor gets credited the next day, next working day. And if it crosses 4:30 p.m., it goes to the second working day, which means any invoice will be credited within 48 hours time. And on the due date, say 45 days or 90 days, where whatever the tenor of discounting is mentioned, again, Ramco's account or the buyer's account will be debited for the principal amount, and respective financial will be credited with the principal amount. That is how the repayment settlement happens. Now here, the repayment doesn't happen through an NEFT or RTGS. Reserve Bank of India has appointed NPCI, that is National Payment Corporation of India, to do the settlement. NPCI is a nodal agency which does all these auto loan transactions or a credit card settlement and all that. So they are the ones who do the entire settlement for TREDS also. So on the due date, automatically the corporate's account will be debited for the principal amount. So the MSME seller doesn't have to worry whether his invoices would be paid on time. He doesn't have to go behind or cajole the corporate to make the payment on time. He just puts the invoice in the platform and gets paid immediately. So that is the uniqueness of the platform. And as on date, as I was talking about, I've seen rates as low as 3.9% per annum on the platform, because gone are the days where banks used to bid at MCLR or PLR rates. The banks have been asked by Reserve Bank of India to even quote as per the treasury bills or the repo rates. So you will find rates as low as 4% or a maximum of 10.5% on the platform. So these two scenarios are in which the discounting happens. Any doubts? I think you can always come in between. Next slide. So as I told, what are the benefits for the MSME seller? It's only a one-time registration with his KYC documents. He gets registered on the platform. He is given an entity ID. There is a significant reduction in his receivable cycle, where the payments used to be got in 60 days or 70 days time. He gets payment on the 4th day or 5th day without waiting for the corporate to make the payment. Second, the seller leverages on the buyer's credit profile. At no point in time, there is a recourse on the MSME vendor. The entire liability, borrowing, recourse is completely on the corporate. So it reduces his cost of funds. When traditionally an MSME has been availing funds at 10% by giving collateral and all the other documents to the banks, they get funds at about 4% or 5% on the strength of the corporate. And as I told before, there is no collateral or any loan liability. It creates a better relationship between the suppliers and the buyers. As far as a buyer is concerned, it gives a flexible payment term. He can discount, make the payment immediately to the MSME vendor, and take a credit period of 180 days, which means the 180 days interest will be borne by the buyer on the platform, and he makes immediate payment to the MSME vendor. So it's an alternate and efficient funding method, even though the buyer has n number of multiple banks on the platform n number of banks for working capital financing. He can still come onto the platform and avail this discounting mechanism. It's a seamless digital payment. There is no paperwork involved. You don't have to go to the banks, and there is a lower vendor administration cost. Usually what we have seen is, for making an early payment, there will be a cash discount, which corporates usually request the vendors. Again, it's a prerogative of the vendors to give the cash discount or not. But then to make an early payment, there is a facility mechanism like this. As far as the financial is concerned, it's very simple. It's a priority sector lending portfolio. That's the reason why rates are as low as 4% on the platform. Next. So these are the reputed PSUs that we work with. I mean, these are only the PSUs, a few of them, but there are almost like 900 corporates who are there on the platform who are discounting the invoices. So somebody has asked about TDS. So all the TDS deduction. So there is an invoice which is generated onto the platform. The TDS. So I have my colleagues also along with me. They will explain how the TDS deduction happens. I'll take that. So as I talked, there are a lot of PSUs. If I take Tamil Nadu, we have Kamarajar Port, we have an NLC India, we have Bharat Heavy Electricals, BHEL. We have other corporates who are there in Chennai who are onboarded with us. Next. And in fact, the latest development happening right now, there was a cabinet decision almost like 4 to 5 months back to include NBFCs onto the platform for discounting. So it is not only banks. You will find all the, I would say around 200, 250 NBFCs across the country also coming onto the platform and discounting invoices. That is the next revolution which is going to happen on threads. Then you will see a lot of MSMEs. I mean, even self-help groups getting funded onto the platform by MFIs and other NBFCs. And as I talked about, it's a completely digital onboarding system. You need not depend on us. You can directly go to the platform. There is something called as a resume registration. You can submit, you can click there and upload your KYC documents. There is an agreement which will be sent from our end. Our RMs will be contacting you, and you can even sign the agreement online, and the onboarding is completed. So this is basically what threads is all about. And all across what we have seen is MSMEs have always raised the issue of getting finance on time and possibly more cost effective. So again, I think there's a question about CC limits. So as far as MSMEs are concerned, the only criteria that Reserve Bank of India stipulates is if an MSME has a CC account, basically the proceeds of the discounting has to flow into that CC account of the MSME vendor, which he has to submit to the platform. If you don't have a CC account, you can very well credit to your current account, but it does not in any way change your banking arrangement, which means if you have a 20 crore limit with an existing bank, you can still continue to go ahead with this 20 crore limit and still avail financing on the platform. So currently it is not available for exports. It's only a domestic factoring which is undertaken on the platform right now. There are a lot of changes that Reserve Bank of, because this is comparatively new platform, I would say it has been 3 years since it has been stabilized, and only domestic bills are discounted currently. But as a platform, we've given a couple of proposals to the Reserve Bank of India, including the Ministry of MSME. One is to include export bills for discounting. Second is, to include non-MSMEs also to come onto the platform and start discounting. So these two proposals are given to the government, and I hope, it would be applicable. So there is a question, what if the buyer is not registered? So the buyer being registered is extremely important. That is the only way in which a transaction can happen. I would say most of the buyers are onboarded on the platform. But if you think that the buyer is not onboarded, probably we can also get in touch with the buyer, because there is a Gazette notification which came in 2019 that it stipulates corporates to come onto the platform and register. And ROC is vehemently following him with all of them to onboard onto the platform. So we can always get in touch with them and onboard them too. So terms and charges on the platform. So bank rate, as I've shown, it's a completely transparent bidding mechanism where you can see the bank rates onto your screen itself. For example, if it's a 5% or 6%, the absolute value of that 5% will be available on your screen. As far as my transaction charges are concerned, we charge anywhere between 0.25% to 0.3% per annum per transaction, which means if it's only for 90 days discounting, it will be a quarter of that. So 0.25% per annum is what I would be charging as a commission. And so that is a bare minimum that we charge. So even that is transparent. For example, there are no other hidden costs. For example, if you come onto the screen and see, say your invoices have been discounted, you can see the absolute value of bank rate, which is say 8%, which works out to 100 rupees, suppose. And if my commission 0.3% works out to 10 rupees, 110 rupees is available on your screen, and that is what you accept, which means there is no other hidden cost involved, unlike a banking system. So whatever you have to pay, it is available on your screen, and that is what you accept. And only then the transaction happens. So I'm taking the queries as and when it comes in the chat box. So maximum fees, there is no maximum fees. I mean, I charge anywhere between 0.25% to 0.5% per annum. Sorry, 0.3% per annum. Earlier, there was an onboarding charge which we take from the vendors, which used to be, it was 3,000 rupees per vendor that we charge for one-time registration. In the interim, I think for 1 year, there was a SIDBI scheme which was working, where SIDBI had actually recovered these, onboarding costs. It was made free till May 31st. Now that is over. So probably I would say the onboarding one-time registration fee would be 3,000 per vendor for a one-time registration. And let me also be clear that, for example, if you get registered on the platform and say you are supplying to Ramco, and those Ramco invoices are getting discounted, tomorrow, if you are supplying to, say, some other corporate, say NLC India, and NLC India is already there onto the platform, you don't have to incur another onboarding cost because you're already registered one time. So any registration which happens onto the platform is a one-time registration. You don't have to again register. No, the MSME does not pay any interest on the CC limit. For example, the entire repayment of the principal comes from the buyer and not from the MSME. You just get your invoices paid on time. So basically, it is not, drawing money from your CC limits. So you are not incurring any interest apart from this, interest on the platform. So we are not basically, there is no, your working capital arrangement is not affected in any way. And the banks are aware about this. So you don't have to take any NOC from any of the working capital bankers either.
There are so many questions. I think you can finish your presentation, then we can take one by one, because otherwise it will get missed, sir.
So CC limits is normally provided by bank based on invoices discounting. So ideally what happens is the limit here is set onto the buyer and not onto the MSME vendor. If you take any regulatory reporting documents, for example, what we call as a CRILC reporting, where limits are reported, the limits will remain on the buyer. And these are unsecured, unadvised limits. So basically what Reserve Bank of India has told all the bankers, you have to set aside certain amount of capital towards this discounting called TREDS, where it will be outside your borrowing, limit. And we've also taken an opinion from one of the auditing firms in the country, a Big Four auditing firm, how this will be reflecting in the books of accounts of even the corporates. So it will traditionally not be a borrowing. It will still be a payment. Basically, it will be sundry creditor payment that you will have to show in the balance sheet. So it will not affect your borrowing power, MPBF, or anything. Yes, medium-sized sectors are also included for the scheme. So basically, it includes micro, small, and medium. And as you're aware, the MSME definition has been changed. Any company, any MSME vendor with a turnover of up to 250 crore will fall under this MSME category. So the scope of MSMEs is increased in a big way. So it includes both the service as well as the manufacturing sector. So up to 250 crore turnover, anybody can come as an MSME on the platform. And if you go to the Udyam site, registration is very simple. It takes hardly 2 days to get registered and you get a certificate. In fact, government has made it mandatory for all MSMEs to get registered on the Udyam portal and get your Udyam registration on time. So that has been made compulsory by the government right now. So we take that document for classifying you as an MSME. And you won't believe, since the pandemic started, I would say, I mean, right now the scenario has changed. So I would say since last year, a lot of leeways have happened onto the platform. For example, we discount, if you look at micro and small enterprises, we discount up to 90-day-old invoices. If you look at medium enterprises, I would say even 128-day-old invoices are discounted onto the platform. So we call it as the date of acceptance. So what the MSMED Act states is, any invoice have to be paid to the MSME vendor from the date of acceptance. It is not date of invoice. So acceptance date is something which the buyer or the seller has to confirm onto the platform. So from the acceptance days, you'll have to be paid in 45 days time. Sir, we have in fact contacted the state government departments. I am in constant touch with the Tamil Nadu now that the government is in place. We have already submitted a proposal to the state government. We are in touch with the Tamil Nadu State Investment Promotion Board, including the commissioner, to implement this across the departments in the state. We have done a successful program in other states. So we are trying to replicate the same in Tamil Nadu also. So I would say these bills will get paid on time once they are onto the platform, because they'll have to make the payment because it's more regulatory in nature than delaying it. So what happens to the invoices already raised by the, so as I told, acceptance of the invoice by the buyer is extremely crucial here. Once the invoice is raised onto the platform, we will notify the, basically the corporate will get a notification that invoices have arrived, and he has to mark his acceptance onto the platform. Once the acceptance is done, it will get discounted. No, the charges are on the invoice amount. For example, it is, say if it's a 10 lakh invoice, it will be 0.3% per annum per transaction, that is 10 lakhs. Just like a bank rate, for example, 8% per annum is on the invoice amount. Similarly, our commission is on the invoice amount. So as far as the invoices are raised or not accepted, so basically acceptance becomes important, sir. I mean, see, the only reason why I'm trying to see, I'll tell you what happens is there is a regulatory angle to this. Once a corporate accepts, so for example, the only reason why a corporate can delay a payment onto the platform is if the terms of conditions are not met. For example, if probably there is a deduction which has to be made, and he's not comfortable with the invoice and he wants to send it back to you, so probably then he can reject an invoice. And otherwise, acceptance becomes extremely crucial. If acceptance does not happen, we will not be able to discount the invoices on the platform. So it's basically the platform or the vendor has to push the corporate to accept it onto the platform. And I've not seen a scenario once the corporate gets onboarded onto our platform that they don't accept it. We've actually discounted close to 6.5 lakh invoices. I've not seen a single invoice where, apart from amount or GST issues, I've not seen any invoices being not accepted onto the platform, unless there is a amount issue or the goods have not reached the go down or any issues like that. So raising invoices right now, it is manual. We also have integrated with the ERP system where it comes from the system itself. It is automated. Now, the new change which is happening is, I hope you're all aware about the Gstn changes. They are talking about e-invoicing. We are also trying to, integrate with the government e-invoicing portal, so that any invoice which will be raised there can be directly integrated with us, and it will be raised onto our platform also. Yes, 0.3% per annum on that invoice amount. Yes. Which means if bank rate is 8%, my commission is 0.3, your effective cost would be 8.3% per annum for that particular transaction invoice amount. So I will send, I will message the contact numbers of the relevant people of our platform. You can contact us anytime, and we will always inform you with who the registered buyers are, be it the PSUs or the corporates. So I'll mention the contact number in the chat box here.
Yeah, we'll be sharing the presentation also, sir, to the participants after the program.
Sure. So KYC, so right now there is a digital onboarding which is already in place, and I have seen digital onboarding happening within 2 days time. For example, I've even seen 1 day. If all the documents are available, you can upload it the same day and get it registered the same day. But on an average, what usually happens is it takes around 2 days. MSME, so we have a lot of, so if I look at the health sector, we have a lot of hospitals onto the platform. For example, if I take, say, the Apollo Hospital, or the hospital in, I guess in Coimbatore, there is a hospital. You have many pharma companies like DRL or a Maladi Pharma. So a lot of pharma companies are also there on the platform. You have a TTK Healthcare. So you have hospital chains and pharma companies onto the platform. And we have a lot of pharma vendors. For example, we have a corporate called Strides, which is prevalent in Bangalore. Strides has a lot of vendors in Chennai and outskirts of Tamil Nadu who are supplying to Strides. And these vendors are getting paid on time. And we've seen almost 20-25 crores of pharma vendor payments happening every month from this particular company alone. We have Bharat Biotech, we have Dr. Reddy's. So in the healthcare space, we have a lot of companies on board. I guess even the discussions are being more digital, I guess. I think everybody's on a chat box.
Yes. Now, one of the person has raised a question that what is the credit availability position? While the systems are important, increasing the availability of fund is also crucial to make things happen. So
yeah, okay. So I'll just give us brief on how the credit happens. For example, a Ramco or any corporate who comes onto the platform, what happens is there are 40 banks. We give all the documents which are publicly available. For example, if Ramco has a 3-year balance sheet or a financial, he has an external rating report like a CRISIL, ICRA, whatever. These rating reports and public documents like financials are made available to all these financials. Unlike a normal working capital arrangement, each bank has an internal committee who takes care of only trades. Once they move a 10-pager note, and this sanction happens in hardly 1.5 to 2 weeks time. For example, if there are 4 banks and they want to set up 10 crore each on Ramco, I'll get 40 crore limits on Ramco within which you can discount the invoices. Similarly, these names are given to multiple banks, and each and every bank can take their own limits on these corporates. So traditionally, we have seen corporates in the rating of BBB and above get limits from many of these banks. And somebody was also asking about the interest rates. So the least I've seen on the platform, I think last week I've seen interest rates at 3.9% per annum. This was for a central PSU. If you look at any corporate in the range of BBB plus or an A minus rated, you can see rates like 6.5 to 6.2% per annum. The maximum I've seen is 10, 10 and a half, nothing more than that. What happens if the MSME who is a vendor to the corporate client but fails to register? So, sir, unfortunately, you'll have to get registered on the platform to avail this discounting system. If you're not registered, again, it goes to the traditional model of pushing and going to the corporate and getting your payments done. This only facilitates you to make the and get the payments immediately. Need detail. Sure. So just give me a call. I think I've mentioned my contact number there. I will clearly indicate how the eligibility works out. And what we have seen is now the banks have become extremely aggressive. Most of the PSU banks, I would say, the best of the rates are not coming from private sector banks, but PSU banks. State Bank of India is a very regular banker who bids onto the platform. You have Union Bank, Bank of Baroda, who are all very aggressive onto the platform, bidding at close to 4.5 to 5% per annum. You have private sector banks like Axis Bank or a KVB and all bidding at very close rates. You have MNC banks like a Standard Chartered coming and bidding and counter bidding, and any bidding gets over in hardly 10 minutes time. For example, if it's a corporate that they want to take an exposure on, the bidding also doesn't go beyond 10 minutes. Within 10 minutes, everything is closed, and probably the next day the MSME gets the money. That's how it happens here. So Amit, you can just contact me. I'll basically describe how the criteria is for the buyers. There will be the publicly available documents and the CRISIL report, which I talked about, which we'll be sharing with the financiers to get the limits for each of these buyers. No, sir. Currently, inward and outward remittances are not covered. It's only the domestic factoring or the domestic bill discounting which is happening. So I've indicated my email ID there and my contact number.
Yes.
Questions. Thank you very much. Basically, this was what the concept. This concept is being driven across the country right now. In fact, all the state governments, central government departments are all actively looking at this platform. The reason being, everything is moving digitally. And I would say digital payment to MSME vendors as an alternative funding mechanism happens through TREDS. Basically, because there is no recourse on the MSME vendor, you don't have to go to the traditional banking system, give n number of collateral or documents to get your financing done. You just need to take the strength of the corporate onto the platform and get your invoices financed on time. So that is a way in which the entire digitization of accounts, digitization of payments is happening. So we will all welcome you, and I would also like to thank Andhra Chamber of Commerce to take such a big initiative, because as far as products are concerned, products are available in the market, but if there is no awareness about the product, it actually doesn't get well into the MSME world, I would say. So I would say thank you very much. Do send this across information to everybody so that you can register on board.
Okay. Thank you.
That's it from my end.
Yeah. Padmanabhan sir, you have anything? You're on mute.
If you are going for expansion, we can also upload copies of the capital equipments. I mean, it's got nothing to do, right? As long as they upload the invoice, it's okay for you, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. One or two questions were left unanswered because then there were rush of this chat
questions.
messages. So
No,
Well,
one has said that we usually have a problem with the payment cycles of our clients, which obviously affects vendor payment. So can we also push our clients to register? I mean, international.
Very much, sir. Yeah, very much, sir. You can always probably inform the buyers to us, and we'll contact them and get them registered too.
but exports is still out of the purview, right, sir?
Yes, sir. Currently, it's out of the purview, but in fact, all the platforms have raised this issue to the government, and we are hoping that that should also come, because export factoring is something that banks are also looking at, because even exports are covered under priority sector, but unfortunately, it is not covered in our discounting system right now in TREDS. So probably, I think Reserve Bank of India should come out with new guidelines on the same.
Okay.
But SBA factoring is, they are doing export factoring. SBA factors.
Yeah, SBI factors there on the platform, but they are only looking at domestic discounting right now.
Okay.
They're very much there. In fact, SBI Global Factor, CanBank Factors, both of them are there on the platform.
Okay.
And you will find a lot of factoring companies coming shortly, because Cabinet has taken a decision. It has to be enacted in the Parliament before it becomes a law. So once it's enacted, I would say all the NBFCs, say Shriram City Union Finance or a Sundaram Finance, a Muthoot, all of them can come onto the platform and start discounting. So you can even find BB rated corporates getting discounted onto the platform. So right now the banks are a little cautious because it's an unsecured platform. But with NBFCs coming in, more action should take place.
Okay. So that in that case, with the heavy competition, the rates should come down.
Yes, sir. In fact, yeah. So one question, a very interesting question. Yes, you can do away with CC limits if this is the only mode of payment where you are making. It's a huge saving as far as the interest cost is concerned. Exactly, true.
But it's not a term loan. Somebody is presuming it's so. It's not a term loan.
No, it is not a term loan. It is not a term loan.
Case to case basis. Am I right? It's a case to case.
Yes, sir. In fact, yes, sir. It is not a term loan. It is only your current liabilities. Basically, it's only your working capital, or I would say the invoices are getting discounted here. So any receivable cycle in 180 days time gets discounted here. Will not be covered.
Okay. You have an office in Chennai, sir?
Yes, sir. I sit in Chennai. So we have a team here. My colleagues are also there on this call. Rajmohan, who takes care of Tamil Nadu and Kerala, along with Hari, who takes care of Tamil Nadu along with the vendor portfolio. So all of us sit in Chennai, and we have people across the country, be it Bangalore.
See, other chamber, we have a presence in Chennai. Not only that, we have a presence in Vijayawada, Secunderabad, and Vizag. We are the only chamber present in 3 states.
Very good, sir. Very good. Okay.
Oldest, we are now 91 plus years. That's why I asked these questions. Not only in Chennai, maybe we need your assistance in Vizag.
Telangana and Andhra.
Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. Andhra Pradesh alone, we have 2 offices. One is in Vijayawada and in Vizag.
Okay. So we have an RM who is there in Vizag, Andhra. So any facilitation to be done there in terms of presentation, we can do it there also, sir, across the states.
Okay, because
here itself, in today's program itself, there are participants from Andhra as well as Telangana, but we can do an exclusive program for them also. No problem.
Sure. So one question raised: any new company who is an MSME vendor can get registered. There is no hard and fast rule. You cannot. Even a new company, even I would say there are certain sectors where GST is not applicable. Even they also can get registered onto the platform and get your invoices discounted.
But your only criterion is the buyer also should be on the platform.
Yes, sir. The buyer has to be there on the platform.
Both the buyer and seller must be on the platform, then the system works.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
There is a question there.
Plus your platform.
Sir, this is certainly possible. So this is what the platform is all about. Right now, we are doing an exercise within our company where we have 8,000, close to 9,000 vendors already registered. We are in fact calling each and every vendor and informing them who are the buyers whom they can connect with. For example, there are 900 buyers on our platform, which includes even PSUs. So we are trying to map according to the industry. For example, if there is a vendor who's in the battery sector, and if I have some 5-6 battery sector companies on the platform, we are informing the vendor that you can go ahead and register with, start transaction with the other battery companies also. So we do help in this market networking, which is a value add, which we as a platform are doing. Yes. So we are very much there in that space.
And you don't charge anything for that, right?
No, sir, we don't charge anything for that. Absolutely not.
It's a facilitation.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is one question, which if the buyer is uploading the invoice and the seller is also accepting, in case the buyer couldn't get the payment in stipulated time from the seller, what is the options left with the buyer?
If the buyer doesn't get or seller doesn't get?
No, in case the buyer couldn't get the payment in stipulated time from the seller, what are the options left with the buyer?
That doesn't arise, because once the platform takes it over, the transaction is between the buyer and the platform. The seller doesn't have anything to do with the payment. Am I right?
But here the question is only for the buyer.
So it has nothing got to do with the buyer, because ultimately the money has to come to the seller account. So once the invoice is raised on the platform and the buyer accepts it, it goes for a discounting and the banks finance it. Ultimately, the money comes to the seller's account. So it is nothing got to do with the receivable cycle of the buyer. It is only got to do with the receivable cycle of the seller.
Or payable cycle of the seller. No.
Yeah.
Payable cycle of the buyer and receivable cycle of the seller.
Exactly. Correct, sir.
Fair enough, sir. Fair enough. Very good. Wonderful.
So can we go to the thanks thing, or do you have some more questions coming up actually? My company.
So I think you can call me any time. If any more queries, our team is always there to answer them. So
the presentation is over, Mr. Krishna Kumar? Is the presentation over?
It's over. It's over. It's over, madam.
Okay. My company buying the goods and as well as selling. Let me know how to register Invoicemart in Invoicemart.
So you can just contact us. We can register both as a buyer and seller. We just have to check the turnover criteria and all that. So you can always give us a call. So we will assist you with that. You can register both as a seller and buyer. New company also, yes, very much.
Great. Great, sir. Thank you very much. And Mr. Krishna Kumar, thanks a lot for the great insight. And the TREADS is a very good initiative by RBI, and it is the main thing is that it has no collateral and loan liability for the MSMEs. That is the greatest point that you have to make to the MSMEs here. Thank you very much for the presentation, and definitely we look forward to take this presentation exclusively for our Andhra and Telangana members also sometime soon. And thanks to Mr. Padmanabhan for this initiative of bringing this contact to us, because the chamber, as he says, that it serves for the past 92 years with it's one of the oldest chamber in South India, and serving the MSMEs with vast knowledge and programs every now and then. And this is one of the great programs that it has to be taken to all the members. And before we wind up, we would like to present the AE memento, and I request Mr. R Padmanabhan to present the AE memento to the speaker.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much for the entire team. I think it has been a very unique and good initiative, and very happy to get associated with ACC. In fact, being one of the oldest organizations also. And I think I think I had a word with Mr. Padmanabhan sir a couple of times, because there are a lot of common areas of interest too. So again, thank you very much. Thanks a lot, sir.
I penned a blog on you. You got it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sure. I went through that. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
So for any clarifications, I think the mail IDs as well as the phone numbers are being given in the chat box. Please, I request the participants to please take a note. And in case if there are any clarifications on this, please feel free to write to the chamber so that we can support you. And as far as the presentation of Mr. Krishna Kumar is concerned, that will be sent to all the participants after the program. Thanks to Mr. Krishna Kumar and Mr. Padmanabhan, and I thank all the participants, the executive committee members of the chamber who have taken time to participate in today's program. We look forward to meet you in the next program.
Thank you, madam.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, madam. Thanks.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you, sir. Thank you.